So today I'm making for you a loaded mince. So it's a mincemeat dish that has a whole bunch of vegetables and legumes and beans so that we get a little bit more out of our mince than just regular mince with tomato. So what you'll need for this recipe is grass-fed organic beef mince, organic tinned tomatoes, some organic red kidney beans, and some broccolini. If there's any other vegetables that you choose or you would like to throw into this, you are more than welcome. I particularly like sweet corn. I just haven't been able to source it for the last 2 weeks. And anything that'll give it a variety of colors. If you'd like to throw some beetroot into it, grate it up, or carrots, you are very welcome to do so. So get a saucepan to make your mince. And what I'm going to do is get some garlic and red onion for my flavors. I'm just going to slice those up, or dice them up at least. I'm never a fan of cutting onions. I find one's hands are stinky the next day. But the taste and the sulfur is so worth it. So garlic and onions are very high in sulfur, which is really great for your body. And I'm just taking the skins off of the onions. Dustbin bowl. I always keep a bowl in front of where I'm working just so that I can throw things away and not have to run backwards and forwards to the dustbin. I chose a very funny way to cut this today. It's not how I usually do it, but I was working without thinking. So a rough chop there of your onions. Just so they're nicely diced and that sulfur is getting all throughout the recipe. I prefer red onions to white onions when I'm working with mince. I find white onions can be super pungent and take over the dish. You want kind of everything to shine in this dish. Red onions also have a lot more sweetness than white onions. And I've got a stray big piece. So onions go into the saucepan. I am going to get those on a medium heat to start browning off. A bit of olive oil, ghee, butter, whichever your oil of choice is. And I'm going to get it on some heat so it starts to become translucent. Then a garlic clove. This is going to be a super garlicky dish. It's a very big garlic clove, but nothing wrong with that. I do love to have extra garlic for the sulfur. And when I'm working with garlic, I always like to smash down the clove, and it just makes it really, really easy to peel. And then when you're chopping it up, it makes it really, really easy to chop too. In my family, there was a fillet dish from Italy. Now that I think about it, it was the most delicious dish, but it was filled with sunflower oil and a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't touch. Anyway, the garlic cloves, it took about 20 to 100 garlic cloves. It was so garlicky. And we had to slice it super thinly so that it sat within all the meat. And whenever I'm chopping garlic, I think of that recipe. Wouldn't go near it now with the seed oils. I'll see if I can find a way to do it with ghee or butter. The garlic has now gone into the saucepan, and I'm just going to add some salt and pepper. And I can hear the onions starting to sizzle off there now. I have mentioned not working with plastic spoons, forks, anything like that. So try and get wood if you can. You'll see my chopping board is wood as well as my utensils. I try and stay away from anything plastic as they start to degrade over time and put microplastics into your foods. So you want to try and avoid that if possible. If it's something that doesn't necessarily fit into your budget right now, then make it a plan eventually to cut down on plastics, particularly chopping boards, because we're cutting so much, it just grates off little tiny microplastics. And anything that you're using in a saucepan is exposed to such high heat, which those plastics just aren't able to hold together, and they start to shed those microplastics. So I've got a whole bunch of broccolini here. If you haven't watched some of my previous videos, I find it very important for you to wash every single vegetable that comes into your home. Every veg and every fruit is exposed to glyphosate and other pesticides. And you just don't want to be ingesting those. It just leads to a number of different autoimmune diseases and other diseases. So if as much as you can to wash everything as it comes into your home before it goes into your fridge, that's what we're aiming for. If you look at the lists, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, you'll see that avocado, for example, is a Clean 15, and it's got a really thick skin on it. So the Clean 15, everything that you eat on there isn't necessarily exposed to, or it has something with a really thick skin. So the actual flesh that you're eating is not exposed to the glyphosate and things like that. I'll still rinse all of my avocados and everything from the Clean 15 too, but I'm definitely I focus more on the Dirty Dozen and making sure that those are clean, as they are exposed to the most toxins, and those toxins go straight in as we eat it. So I'm just going to run some water and sodium bicarbonate. I use that as well as some coarse salt to clean my vegetables. 1 scoop. And this is a brand new packet, so I'm just going to be washing everything and then putting it into a container in the fridge. The more you do as it comes back from the store in terms of washing, the less you have to do later when it comes to prepping. Starting to smell absolutely delicious. My garlic is starting to brown a little bit. I don't want to burn my garlic, otherwise it goes really bitter. And my onions are starting to become translucent, so that means it's time for us to add our grass-fed and organic meats. In South Africa, we have a butcher called Frankie Fenner Meat Merchants. They are brilliant with their grass-fed organic meats. They're one of the suppliers that I find has the most variety while still having integrity in their food. So my mince goes in to the saucepan, and I'm just going to move it around so that it starts to brown on the outside. So my mince is cooking away nicely, starting to be cooked all over. I'm just making sure that I'm breaking up all of the big pieces so that it's a nice fine mince. Something that I try and do as much as I can is eat organ meat, but I really struggle with eating raw organ meat. I find that the taste is too intense for me, and I really struggle, other than peri chicken livers, which I will do a recipe on. So I have a great butchery close to me, and if you have a good butcher, it's always good to speak to them about perhaps mincing organ meat into your mince. That way it's kind of hidden in a recipe with all the other stuff. So organ meat is definitely good to put into minces like this. It's hidden, and if you're like me and you can't really deal with the taste of it, once it's minced, it actually starts to disappear a little bit. It gives the mince a wonderful, rich flavor. So my broccolini has been soaking in the bicarbonate of soda for some time. So I'm going to take that out, give it a rinse, and get it ready to put away. I'm rinsing it again because I just want to remove any additional bicarbonate of soda so that it lasts nice and long in the fridge. And this whole bag of broccolini I'm going to be using, I'm going to blanch and refresh some so that I can just have it in the fridge to put into breakfast tomorrow or dinner tomorrow, into a salad. I like to cook everything in advance if this is your first video watching me. So if my broccolini is done and I'm feeling like a snack, I can just grab a few spears of broccolini and have it with some wonderful hummus or any kind of dip that you like. It just helps you get loads of broccoli and sulforaphane, which is the main wonderful ingredients in broccoli that is so good for us. For DNA sequencing, it's absolutely incredible. So as much broccoli as you can get in as possible, that's what we're aiming for. I have just thrown a tin of tomato into this recipe, and I am mixing it through the mince so that the flavor of that tomato is taken through all of the mince. I am just putting some broccoli away. So after I've washed it and given it a good rinse, I get a Tupperware and I line it with paper towel. And then I will put the broccoli inside and put another piece of paper towel on top, just so that all moisture is kept out and it lasts for longer. So that can be put away in the fridge. The remaining broccoli I'm going to be cooking for this week. So my mincemeat is now cooking away in the tomato. I want that tomato to break all the way down so that it's fully cooked through and it's dissolved. So I'm going to place a lid on it and I'm going to turn the heat right down and it can simmer for some time. In the interim, I've got a whole bunch of broccolini. I want to blanch and refresh that. So I have just boiled the kettle and I'm going to pour it into a saucepan and put it on high heat to make sure that it is boiling. And I'm going to grab all of my broccolini and start to place it into that boiling water. You can even do this without boiling the water over the saucepan. It can just go into a vessel of boiling water and sit for 2 minutes. But if you keep the heat up, you can leave it for about 1.5 minutes. So I'm just placing that all into the boiling water. And I just want to make sure it's properly submerged so that it's cooking through. And I'm going to leave that for 2 minutes. Something that I've just thought about that I'd like to add to this recipe, because I'm always looking for as many colors in a recipe as possible. So I've got red with tomato, I've got onions for the sulfur, I have got garlic for the sulfur, and then I've got broccoli, which is green. So I need something purple to make this more of a complete meal. So I've got some beautiful organic cabbage, red cabbage, that I'm going to be using in this recipe. I am going to grab a mandolin to be putting it into this recipe. And I'm just going to cut my head of cabbage in half so that it's easier to put through the mandolin. Look at that beautiful cabbage. So in the pot, I'm just going to start to mandolin some red cabbage. I always take the outer husk of the cabbage off, just in case it's been exposed to pesticides. And I'm just going to start to grate some red cabbage into the recipe. Cabbage is also very high in sulfur, so great for you. And it's a purple vegetable, so it's got a lot of polyphenols in it. I'm just going to stir that up. This is a very sulfur-rich meal. And let that cabbage start to cook off. My broccolini has been in for 2 minutes now. So I want to just drain that as soon as possible. Nicely blanched. I'm just going to cool the pots down. and put a whole bunch of cold water into the pot. With a bunch of ice. And my broccoli can go straight into the icy water to refresh. And I can leave that to start going nice and green again. Just giving this mince a nice little stir again. And the lid can go back on so that it can cook thoroughly. Something that I have prepared this week is some sweet potato, and it has been baked off with some rosemary and some thyme and salt and pepper. So I've got a whole bunch of extra here, which is the case with my fridge all the time. I pre-make everything so that when I'm making a meal, it just makes it so much easier to throw things together. So I've got some sweet potato here. I'm going to be throwing sweet potato in. So as you can recall, I've done something purple, now something orange. I've got red. I will have green once the broccolini is ready. And then I will have organic red kidney beans for legumes or beans. So I'm going to get those drained and ready to go. I strongly recommend that you drain any beans that you buy in a store. And I've just got a sieve. I'm just going to give the beans a solid rinse. And then you can let them sit to drain. The only thing I don't necessarily rinse is, or throw the water away at least, is chickpeas. The juice that comes off of tinned chickpeas can be used as an alternative for eggs if you were to make a vegan meringue or something like that. It can really help to bind things together. And my sweet potatoes are now fully incorporated and warming beautifully. I'm just going to put the lid back on again. So my broccolini has finished cooling. It's ice cold there now. So we've kind of stopped the cooking process and the color has returned to a bright green and beautiful. So I'm going to just pull that out of the water. And get it ready to either place away in a container or to put into the recipe. So I've got a container. I'm going to put a whole bunch of pieces away for me to use for breakfast or for lunch or for dinner tomorrow, or even just as a snack to dip in some hummus. And I'm going to use 6-7 broccolini spears to place into this recipe. Now, I want to chop this quite finely. The nice thing about blanching and refreshing is that you still get the crunch of the broccoli and the freshness, while not that super raw, very difficult to digest type feeling. If you have small kids, and I know kids aren't very in love with broccoli, you can cut it really, really finely so that they aren't able to see what it is per se. And it's a lovely way to hide vegetables, particularly in minced meat. So this broccolini is ready to go in. And I'm just going to get it thrown into the mince. And stir to incorporate. We're kind of at the end of the cooking process of this mince. You don't want to be cooking this for a lot longer. It's kind of, broccolini goes in almost at the end. You just want to give it enough time for all the flavors of the meat, cabbage, all of your sulfurous vegetables to be incorporated into the broccoli. And this is looking absolutely delicious. Now, there is one more ingredient that needs to go into this meal. This really can be a meal in itself. It's got carbohydrates, it's got proteins, it's got fats, it's got all of the different colors of vegetables. But I've got some organic red kidney beans here that have been rinsed. If you don't rinse them, you will struggle with a little bit of flatulence. So I strongly suggest that you rinse all canned beans very, very well. And I'm just going to pop this into the saucepan. And really, we don't want these to cook for a long time. As I say, this can be a meal in itself, just a bowl of this. You could pair it with the St. Anna's organic taco shells or St. Anna's crisps. And make a beautiful organic nacho dish. At the end, you could grate some parmesan onto it and just lay this all on a plate, pop the mince on top with a little bit of parmesan to finish, and it makes a beautiful organic nachos dish. Alternatively, you could get some organic taco shells and just serve this with the taco shells. It is an absolute winner for dinner parties. It's an absolute winner for children because all their hidden vegetables are inside there. And for a lot of people who don't like vegetables, it's kind of hidden, so you can't even really taste it. A great way to get your vegetable intake in. So I have onions, I have garlic, I have tomato, I have broccolini, I have red cabbage, I have sweet potato, I have all the colors that I need and want, and I've got mincemeat for protein, and I've got red kidney beans for protein and carbohydrate. It really is such a well-balanced meal. As you watch my show, you'll find that I don't really do much with anything with a barcode. I try and stay away from it as much as possible. I'm just going to add some additional Celtic salt that the recipe needs. Another pinch of Celtic salt. And a generous pinch of black pepper. And I'm going to be using some Worcestershire sauce, however you say it, debatable. And I always find that this rounds the flavor off so well. So a dash of Worcestershire sauce. If you have Bovril, Marmite, Vegemite, it's always nice to put a little teaspoon of this into the recipe. It makes the recipe a bit more salty and delicious. And that is my loaded mince complete. So I'm in the serving stage of having this beautiful mince for dinner. I have just placed some of the broccolini that I've already cooked onto a plate. I like to have additional broccoli. It really is a staple in my diet. And I'm gonna load a whole bunch of this mince onto a plate. I can see the beautiful red cabbage stringing between everything. And then something that I really like to do with this is a dollop of hummus. So I'm just going to do a small dollop of hummus to go with it. And that is a lot of vegetables in one meal. Ready to serve and go and enjoy.